So if you'll go to the next slide, I'll talk about the elections a little bit. As everyone knows by now, the Republicans in the House of Representatives took the majority back from the Democrats. However, the Democrats retained the majority in the United States Senate. If you look at just some top-line numbers that are important to the pork industry and agriculture, you had 15 House Democrat Ag Committee members lost their re-election bid. And when you look at that, so those members will be replaced by new incoming Republican freshmen. Some have an ag background, some do not. There'll be a large education process as we move forward into the 112th Congress. But if you even look a little further into just the Democrats losing, if you look at the makeup of the House Ag Committee and the members that won their re-election bid, only 6 were around in the 2008 Farm Bill cycle. So you're going to have probably 27 to 28 members of the House Agriculture Committee responsible for writing the 2012 Farm Bill that have never dealt with the Farm Bill process before. So again, a large education and outreach campaign on behalf of the national pork producers and agriculture. The next point you can see in the Senate, not a lot changed. The margins got a little slimmer. The Democrats had a 60-40 margin. Going into the November 2nd elections, the Republicans picked up 6 seats. That made that margin 53-47. So, if you look at that, what that really means is anything coming out of the Senate is going to have to be bipartisan because the minority has a lot of control in the United States Senate. And with an increased number of Republicans in, it will be more difficult for the Democrats to move their agenda. As far as committees are concerned in the United States Senate, Blanche Lincoln, senator from Arkansas, who is the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee, lost her re-election bid. The Democrat leadership in the Senate has named Debbie Stabenow from Michigan the new chair of Agriculture Committee. She is very big on specialty crops, issues like that. We have worked with her on some of the issues. In fact, we actually helped her with her chairmanship appointment with a little PR the National Pork Producers in Michigan Board did. So we've got some goodwill built up with her. But as far as competition issues, GIPSA, EPA, she's never really staked out a position on those. So we're going to have to come in and educate her on what this means to the pork industry. And also, just on that first slide, I've also mentioned that Frank Lucas will be the new chairman of the House Agriculture Committee in the House. Mr. Lucas was currently the ranking member in the House. He's a good friend of the National Pork Producers Council. He understands production livestock. His wife is a cattle feeder, and we're very excited about him being in control, and we'll look at with him. So, Roger, if you go to the next slide, the midterm elections, a couple more numbers. The Republicans I have on there that they picked up 62. It's actually 63 now. That represents the largest turnover in Congress in modern history. The last one was in 1994 when the Republicans had picked up, I think, around 42, 43 seats. So a major turnover. There are a total of now 96 new House members in the 112th Congress. 87 of those are freshman Republicans. So you've got, a little less than a third of the entire United States House are freshmen, and a lot of these have no legislative experience whatsoever, never dealt with any type of issues that they will be facing. So a lot of green candidates. We've actually met with a few of them between the 2nd and now, and we've got a few of them coming into the office next week because, again, education is the name of the game going into the 112th Congress. If you look at the leadership of the House, John Boehner from Ohio, former Ag Committee Chairman, is the new Speaker of the House, so that's exciting. Eric Cantor from Virginia, another major pork-producing state, is the majority leader. Nancy Pelosi was reelected to the House Minority Leader. Steny Hoyer was reelected to the House Minority Whip. So the players in the House continue to be the same. They've just flip-flopped roles between the majority and the minority. The steering committee is the committee that actually assigns committee assignments within the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. They are currently meeting right now, so hopefully maybe by the end of this week, first of next week, We will know all of the chairmen because there are some chairmanships that are still up in the air right now as to who will take those, especially when it comes to Energy and Commerce and the Appropriations Committee. And after the chairmen are, because that is a voted seat by the Democrat and Republican caucuses, then we will know exactly what committee assignments look like. Probably be by the end of the year before we see what exactly the House Ag and the Senate Ag committees will look like. So, Roger, if you go to the next slide, the Lameduck Session, Congress is in session this week and most likely will be in session next week. They passed, as of yesterday, the Senate Food Safety Bill, S510, passed. That is, MPPC was supportive of this bill, mostly because we're not regulated by this bill. It dealt with FDA-related issues and not USDA-related issues. As you may have heard, that there was a House version of food safety that did kind of backdoor FDA into having jurisdiction over meat production. We were very much opposed to that. The rumor and the thought going right now is the House is going to take up the Senate bill, although as of this morning, there seems to be a tax issue with the Senate bill, and the whole thing just may come to a screeching halt and we may start all over again next year. After the House is supposed to turn to child nutrition this week. The reason that is important is because we were not cut out of child nutrition. There was a lot of talk, especially coming out of the First Lady's office. A lot of emphasis on reducing the amount of protein in diets. They wanted to start with the school lunch program. We were able to keep current pork products on the market. We actually got a few relisted, but we did not get cut out, which was the main goal of that. So after the House deals with child nutrition and they decide what's going on with food safety, nobody really knows what's going to happen. As you probably heard, the president met with the congressional leaders yesterday to talk about the expiring tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. Everything will be on hold until they figure out what that package looks like. What we're hearing right now, it will be next week probably before they have any type of deal on which provisions they're going to extend and for how long, or if they're going to do anything at all. Included in that, in the Bush tax cuts, could possibly be a tax extenders package. The two main things that the National Pork Producers Council are tracking in the package would be the blender's tax credit and the ethanol tariff, both set to expire December 31st. It's looking more and more like the tax extenders will not be included in this package, simply by the fact that some of these tax extenders are fairly controversial, including the blender's tax credit, which costs about $6 billion a year. And the ethanol tariff gets labeled as an ethanol subsidy, which all subsidies are coming under fire right now. And it's widely known that the president and the congressional leaders, if they get a deal worked out on the Bush tax cuts, that they will very much oppose any other additions to the package that may strike the deal. So I think you'll have a strong push by leadership if they get a deal worked out to keep it just to what is worked out with the White House and not put anything else on there. The other thing that Congress must do before the end of this week is pass a continuing resolution, which is what keeps the government funded. That's supposed to run out on Friday. If they do not do that, the government will shut down, and they will not let that happen. The question is, do they continue it through, do they just move it another week or two down the field, or do they extend the resolution into next year so they come in and they would do a spending package and budget and start all over again in 2011? As of right now, I don't think anybody knows which way they're going to go with that. But again, if you're just looking for an appropriations bill, which will affect research funding and all other farm programs, probably not going to happen this year. The outlook is bleak. So if you'll go to the next slide, the main thing that the national pork producers are dealing with right now is the GIPSA rule. I'm sure everybody knows of the proposed rule that USDA came out with dealing with livestock contracts. I won't go into the details of it, but just kind of tell you some of the latest things that have happened. The comment period closed on November 22nd. MPPC filed its comments a couple of days before that. As of yesterday morning, 53,000 total comments had been filed so far on the proposed rule. And if you look at those comments, 35% are for it. 65% are for the proposed rule, 35% are against. However, when you dig into the numbers, as you can see on the slide, the 35% that are opposed to the rule are all rural Americans that make their living tied to animal agriculture in some form or fashion. So basically, the people that this affects are opposed to it. And then if you look at the 65% that are for it, it's like 90% of those are urban consumers. If you look at them, they're from Chicago, New York, San Francisco. So a large campaign was put on with consumers to weigh in on this issue, even though they're not directly affected by the rule at all. So that's something that we're working with the media and the administration in Congress to kind of make sure that story is told. As you can see, MPPC had a total of 16,000 comments filed as of November 22nd. The next step in GIPSA, we're in Chapter 2. We are currently, we're waiting. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern. USDA will now take these comments. They need to address every one of them, respond. So that can take months. We don't expect anything out of USDA until maybe June or July. At this point in time, they can change the rule and reissue it, or they can just go with the final rule. Again, we think we've got a couple of months before that happens. As far as congressional action on GIPSA, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern until committee assignments are divvied up, because that's when we'll look to see as a legislative strategy or an appropriation strategy to possibly defund the initiative. But that's what we're looking at as far as GIPSA is concerned. Roger, if you go to the next slide, the 2012 Farm Bill, Chairman Peterson, the current chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, had indicated many times and publicly stated that he would like to write the 2012 Farm Bill in 2011. He held a total of 17 field hearings and hearings out in the countryside and in Washington, D.C. on the matter. He felt that 2011 would be a better budget year to do the Farm Bill than wait till 2012 when it expires. Chairman Lucas does not share that plan. In fact, he's stated publicly that he may look to redo some of the field hearings that were done, and is not in any hurry to write the Farm Bill. So we don't expect that until 2012. And looking at the presidential elections, it may not even be 2012. It may be 2013 before the final Farm Bill is written. Real quick, in the 2007 Farm Bill, the 2007 Farm Bill was introduced in May of 2007. It wasn't passed and signed by Congress until May of 2008, so a whole year process. Again, the Senate has indicated that they are not in any hurry to rewrite the Farm Bill. It would be 2012 probably before they would take it up, mostly because we're going to have a budget reconciliation process in spring of 2011, where committees will be made to make some cuts, probably across the board. In the Ag Committee world, probably a lot of the nutrition programs will receive a little bit of a haircut, but the farm programs, direct payments, farm subsidies will also be under heavy scrutiny. So I think the members of Congress want to see how they have to deal with that until they start to write the Farm Bill. And then again, I just point out in the bottom slide that Lucas has stated that he won't start until 2012. And there's actually, in the last couple of weeks, there's been a rumor flying around about possibly just a 2-year extension to get us past the 2013 elections. National pork producers would be fine with a 2-year extension. Usually with the Farm Bill, we try to keep bad things from happening. Instead of we don't get into a lot of the farm programs. In fact, we don't have any subsidy programs. We do use the Farm Bill for research purposes, but mostly we just try to keep stuff out of the Farm Bill. So If you go on to the next slide, and this is when I'm going to start looking into the 112th Congress and the 2011, and as you can see, it's all about the money. The Congress will focus solely on reducing the deficit, cutting spending, getting the federal budget back in order. That will drive the agenda, especially for the first 6 months of 2011. So you won't see a lot of other legislation coming down the pike other than if it's related to the budget. And Roger, if you go to the next slide, the Bipartisan Debt Commission, they came out with another issue this morning. This is the debt commission that the president has put together to look at the budget to try to come up with ways that we can get rein in spending. Their first iteration was very controversial. They touched a lot of sacred cows, Medicare, Social Security, but also they got into some agriculture programs, farm subsidies, direct payments. They also recommend increasing the federal gas tax, which of course affects all of agriculture. They came out with a new proposal this morning that was a little softer than their initial one, but still very controversial. They have been meeting individually with the members of the Debt Commission. They have to have 14 members out of 18 vote for this to send it to Congress as a proposal. Even if it gets sent to Congress, there's nothing binding. Congress does not have to act on it. It is simply a blue ribbon panel and proposal and a guideline to getting this stuff done. But I wanted to put that in there because that is going to drive a lot of what's going on Capitol Hill at the beginning of next year. So the next slide is just a nice little vision or visual aid that you can see what the federal budget is. Non-discretionary spending takes up most of the pig, and you can see that discretionary spending is the little tail at the end. So, it's going to be very interesting in Washington, D.C. As you can see, non-discretionary spending is where all the spending is. Discretionary spending, when you hear about earmarks, stuff like that, that is a small piece of the puzzle. And if these guys are really serious about getting into deficit reduction, they're going to have to start looking at Social Security, Medicare, and the entitlement programs. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they tackle this one. If you go to the next slide, the domestic public policy outlook for 2011. This is what we anticipate will be coming fairly quickly. Again, I've touched on a couple of these things. The tax cuts, depending on if they get anything worked out before the new year. And I'll give you my opinion on this. I do think that a deal will be reached at some point in time. I do not think that they will let the Bush tax cuts completely expire. It may be a slimmed-down version or a compromise on behalf of the Republicans and Democrats, but I think we will have something. Also, as far as the tax extenders, especially when it comes to ethanol subsidies and the blender tax credit, I don't think those are going to be reinstated. However, I do think that you will see some different form of those early in 2011. They may switch to infrastructure payments or something of that nature, but I imagine the federal government is probably still going to give the ethanol industry some form of assistance. I think there are folks in the White House that are too close to the ethanol industry to let those just completely go away. I talked about budget deficit and budget reconciliation again. That's a process where the House and Senate will have to look committee by committee and shave off spending. Also, some other issues that we anticipate. Speaker Boehner is full bore on repealing the health care bill. He probably will be able to get something through the House. They'll never be able to get anything through the Senate. And even if they did, I'd be surprised if the president would sign it. So I think you'll see Congress spend a lot of time on that, but no real action. Again, Farm Bill is up in the air for 2011. Probably won't happen until 2012. Immigration was a hot topic and very important to agriculture. Nothing happened this year. If anything is going to happen, it's going to happen next year because the Democrats and Republicans will not want to deal with immigration in 2012 in a presidential election and House elections. It's just too hot of a topic. It's a very controversial and divisive topic. So if anything gets done, it'll be done in 2011, but my forecast is doubtful for any type of immigration. The one thing that I forgot to put on this slide is our trade issues that we are working on right now that we think are going to come up early in 2011. We don't think we're going to get a resolution on before the end of this year. And that way, it was mentioned earlier, the Mexican trucking issue with the tariffs and the retaliation. We are working with USTR and the Mexican government to devise a solution to the issue of Mexican trucks not being able to come across the borders. I think it's late February or March. If we don't get something done by then, that Mexico would be able to reissue or redo the retaliation list, and they could actually increase tariffs. That's something that we're looking with. We've had a lot of meetings in the last 2 weeks, and we'll continue to have those meetings, urging our friends on Capitol Hill to contact the White House and push forward on this so we can get the situation fixed. The second trade issue that I forgot, that I apologize was not on the slide, is the Korea Free Trade Agreement. And I think Steve may have touched on that a little bit, but, a boom for the pork industry. We were hoping to have a deal 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, there are still a few hang-ups, as mostly concerned with automobiles. The administration is very hopeful that they will be able to get a resolution on that, and I would expect that to be sent to Congress sometime probably around early to mid-February, given that we have a deal. The trade agreement doesn't have a lot. It should pass. It doesn't have a lot of the traditional hang-ups. I'm from North Carolina, from the South. Textiles is always a big issue with any of these trade agreements, sending jobs to China. This doesn't exactly have that stigma to it, so hopefully it will move quick. And as you can see I put the last point, with the presidential elections coming up, any type of major legislation, controversial measures, probably not likely to be addressed by Congress, simply for the fact they don't want those to be campaign ads for their opponents. If you look at some of the other things on the next slide, Roger, pork industry policy issues, we are going to work with the new Republican Congress to hold a lot of oversight on the administration. I'll say real quick, the last 2 or 3 years, Congress has not been a problem for the pork industry. In fact, they've actually been a very good friend of ours. It's the administration that we have had the most issues with, because the administration has decided that they will legislate outside of Congress, which is not their purview. But now with the Republicans in control of the House, we will have much more of ability to hold the administration's feet to the fire and publicly, demonstrate what they are doing with oversight hearings, especially when it gets to EPA, USDA, and FDA. Renewable fuels policy, the same way, we'll be able to have an open and fair debate on what America's renewable fuels policy should be, and not picking winners and losers. Food safety reform, FDA versus FSIS, is widely held that the food safety bill that I talked about earlier that passed the Senate yesterday, that is, may pass this week and be sent to the president, is a blueprint for what FSIS, who does regulate the meat industry, will do. We meet monthly with FSIS. They have assured us that nothing like that is coming down the pike. However, I would be very surprised if we don't see some sort of FSIS food safety reform bill in 2011. Farm bill hearings, again, we talked about we may redo some of the farm bill hearings, budget reconciliation, and the FY 2012 appropriations process. I mean that is just it's anybody's guess right now. The appropriations process has been broken in Washington for some time. Speaker Boehner is about to get that back, give more power more to the authorizing committees, take a little less power away from the appropriations committees, and get these bills out before the end of the fiscal year. Lots of leadership, going back, Republican and Democrat, have promised that. It's a difficult thing to do, especially when you get into earmark reform and how members are going to adjust that. So that's what we'll be dealing with, looking into the 2011 thing. Also, I didn't talk about antibiotics, an issue that we dealt with a lot in 2010, got a lot of public fanfare, not a lot of movement in Congress. There were some bills that were introduced but never got any traction. However, FDA is in a process of putting out regulatory or guidelines on the judicious use of antibiotics in all of meat production. They're in the formative stages for that. We've met with them. We issued comments on that. But again, that the individuals at FDA that are handling this have a very desired outcome as to they want to get rid of growth promotants. We've talked with them. We think they understand. We're still a little leery of what they're trying to get. However, again, with the oversight ability of Congress, we'll be able to pull these guys up, make them explain themselves, answer some pretty tough, hard-hitting questions, and get this out in the media. And this administration doesn't like to be embarrassed in the media. I mean, that's a very well-known fact.